The wind howled like a wounded animal across the empty plains of Arizona Territory. Ethan Cole stood at the window of his lonely farmhouse, watching the sky turn an angry shade of black. He had seen storms before, plenty of them in his 32 years. But something about this one felt different, darker, more dangerous. Lightning cracked across the horizon, illuminating the vast emptiness that surrounded his property. No neighbors for miles, no family waiting inside. Just Ethan, his 3 horses, and the memories of a life that had led him to this isolated place. He turned away from the window and added another log to the fire. The flames danced and crackled, casting long shadows across the wooden walls. Outside, the first drops of rain began to fall. Slowly at first, then harder, until it sounded like 1,000 drums beating against the roof. Ethan poured himself a cup of coffee and sat down in his worn leather chair. This was his life now, quiet, alone, safe from the disappointments of the world. But the world, it seemed, was not done with Ethan Cole. The sound came from the barn, a crash, followed by the frightened whinnying of his horses. Ethan grabbed his lantern and pulled on his coat. The rain hit him like a wall of ice as he stepped outside, soaking through his clothes in seconds. He pushed forward, boots sinking into the mud, until he reached the barn door. He pulled it open and raised his lantern high. 2 figures huddled in the corner, pressed against the hay bales. Women. Their dark hair plastered to their faces, their clothes drenched and torn. One of them held her arm close to her body, injured maybe. The other stood slightly in front, protective, her eyes blazing with a mixture of fear and defiance. Apache women. Ethan recognized the traditional patterns on their clothing, the beadwork that even rain and mud couldn't completely hide. For a long moment, nobody moved. If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. It truly makes us happy to hear from you. The protective one spoke first, her English careful but clear. We mean no harm. Our horse, she fell, broke her leg in the storm. We had nowhere else to go. Ethan lowered his lantern slightly, studying them. The injured one couldn't be older than 26, her face tight with pain. The one speaking, her older sister, he guessed, maybe 28. Both of them shivering so hard he could hear their teeth chattering. He thought about what most men would do in this situation, what the smart thing would be. Send them away. Don't get involved. Protect yourself. But Ethan Cole had never been very good at doing the smart thing. How bad is her arm? He asked. The older woman blinked, clearly surprised he wasn't reaching for a weapon or shouting at them to leave. I don't know. She fell when the horse went down. It may be broken. Ethan nodded slowly. The rain continued to pound against the barn roof, and another flash of lightning lit up the sky outside. All right, he said finally. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to stay here tonight, in the barn. There's plenty of clean hay, and I'll bring blankets. Tomorrow, when the storm passes, we'll figure out your situation. The older woman stared at him. Why would you help us? You don't know us, your people and mine. We are not exactly friends. Ethan met her gaze steadily. I don't know anything about your people or my people. I know there are 2 women freezing in my barn during the worst storm I've seen in years. That's enough. He didn't wait for a response. He turned and walked back out into the rain. When he returned, his arms were full. 2 thick wool blankets, a pot of hot soup still steaming, a roll of clean bandages, and a small bottle of medicine for pain. The younger woman, Naya, her sister called her, had stopped shivering quite so violently. The older one, Ayana, watched Ethan's every move with those sharp, careful eyes. For her arm, Ethan said, setting down the supplies. Wrap it tight tonight. Keep it still. If it's broken, she'll need a proper splint tomorrow. Ayana took the bandages slowly, as if she expected them to disappear. You are not what I expected. Most people aren't, once you actually meet them. Ethan set down the soup and straightened up. There's more hay in the back if you need it. Storm should pass by morning. He turned to leave, then stopped at the barn door. My name is Ethan. Ethan Cole. If you need anything during the night, the house is right there. He pointed through the rain. Don't hesitate. Ayana nodded slowly. I am Ayana. This is my sister, Naya. Thank you, Ethan Cole. This kindness will not be forgotten. Something passed between them in that moment. Not quite trust, but the beginning of something. A crack in the wall that separated strangers. Ethan nodded once and stepped back into the storm. He didn't sleep well that night. Every gust of wind made him sit up, listening. Every crack of thunder had him glancing toward the barn. Not because he was afraid of the women, but because something about the whole situation felt unfinished, like this was just the beginning of a much longer story.
He was right.
But Ethan Cole had no idea just how much his life was about to change, or that the simple act of kindness he had shown tonight would bring both danger and a gift beyond anything he could imagine. The storm raged on, and somewhere in the darkness, fate was already moving. The silence woke him. Ethan's eyes snapped open as the first pale light of dawn crept through his window. The storm had passed. No more howling wind, no more thunder shaking the walls, just an almost unnatural stillness, as if the world itself was holding its breath. He lay there for a moment, staring at the ceiling, his mind drifting back to the events of the previous night. The two women in his barn, the fear in their eyes, the way Ayana had looked at him when he offered help, like she was seeing something she didn't quite believe. Ethan threw off his blanket and pulled on his boots. The morning air was crisp and clean, washed fresh by the storm. Puddles dotted the ground, reflecting the pale blue sky. Everything smelled of wet earth and new beginnings. He walked to the barn, his boots squelching in the mud, and pulled open the heavy wooden door. Empty. The women were gone. No trace of them remained. No wet clothes hanging to dry. No sign of the injured sister. Even the hay where they had slept had been carefully rearranged, fluffed and stacked, as if no one had ever touched it. Ethan stood there, taking it in. They had cleaned everything. The barn looked better than it had in months. The tools were organized. The horse feed was covered properly. Even the small window had been wiped clean of dust. A strange feeling settled in his chest. Not disappointment exactly. Something else. Something he couldn't name. Then he saw it, hanging from a nail on the barn door. A bracelet, handmade, with small blue and white beads woven into an intricate pattern. The craftsmanship was extraordinary, each bead placed with precision and care. Ethan lifted it gently, turning it over in his rough hands. A gift. A thank you. He slipped it into his pocket and walked back to the house. By midday, Ethan had loaded his wagon for the trip to town. He needed supplies, flour, salt, nails for the fence that the storm had damaged. Simple things. Routine things. But nothing about this day felt routine. The ride to town took nearly an hour. Ethan used the time to think, his mind returning again and again to the woman called Ayana. The way she had stood in front of her injured sister, ready to fight if necessary. The way her eyes had softened, just slightly, when he offered help instead of hostility. He shook his head. Foolish thoughts. They were gone, and he would likely never see them again. The town of Dusty Springs was small but busy. A general store, a blacksmith, a livery stable, a few other buildings clustered around a dusty main street. People moved about their business, nodding to each other, stopping to chat. Ethan tied his horse outside the general store and stepped inside. "Morning, Cole," called out Samuel, the store owner, a round man with a friendly face. "Storm treat you all right?"
"Well enough," Ethan replied. "Lost a few fence posts. Nothing I can't fix."
He gathered his supplies quietly, loading them into a basket. Flour, salt, a new coil of rope. He was reaching for the nails when he heard the voices behind him. Two men stood near the window, talking in low tones that weren't quite low enough. "I'm telling you, Bill saw them himself. Two strangers out near Cole's property. Outsiders. Don't know where they came from or what they wanted." "What kind of strangers?" "Don't know, but they weren't from around here. That's for sure. And you know what I always say? Outsiders mean trouble. Every single time." Ethan's hand tightened around the box of nails. "Someone ought to ride out there and have a word with Cole. Find out what he knows. Last thing we need is unknown people wandering around, causing problems." Ethan turned slowly. The two men, Jake Mercer and his friend Tom, fell silent when they saw him looking. "Something you want to say to me?" Ethan asked, his voice calm but firm. Jake shifted uncomfortably. He was a big man, used to intimidating people, but something in Ethan's steady gaze made him hesitate. "Just talking, Cole. No offense meant." "Good." Ethan set his basket on the counter and counted out his coins. "Because who I have on my property is my business, not yours, not anyone else's." The store fell silent. Even Samuel stopped moving, watching the exchange with wide eyes. Jake's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. After a long moment, he turned and walked out, Tom following close behind. Ethan finished paying for his supplies and nodded to Samuel.
"Have a good day."
He loaded his wagon and climbed aboard, flicking the reins to start the horses moving. As he rode out of town, he could feel eyes on his back, watching, judging. Let them watch. Ethan Cole had spent his whole life trying to please others, trying to fit in, trying to do what was expected. And where had it gotten him? Alone on a farm in the middle of nowhere. No more. He would do what he believed was right. And if the town didn't like it, well, that was their problem. The bracelet sat heavy in his pocket, a reminder of a kindness given and a kindness returned. He had no way of knowing that this was only the beginning. 3 days passed without incident. Ethan repaired his fence. He fed his horses. He went about his quiet life as if nothing had changed. But something had changed. He could feel it in his bones. A restlessness that wouldn't let him sleep. A sense that the story wasn't over yet. He found himself looking at the bracelet every evening, running his fingers over the smooth beads, wondering about the woman who had made it, wondering if she was safe, if her sister's arm was healing.
Foolish thoughts. Dangerous thoughts.
On the 4th day, the riders came. Ethan was in the barn, brushing down his oldest horse, when he heard the hoofbeats. 4 horses, moving fast, coming up the road toward his property. He set down the brush and stepped outside, squinting against the afternoon sun. Jake Mercer led the group. Behind him rode Tom, and 2 other men Ethan recognized from town. Rough men who worked at the cattle ranch east of Dusty Springs. All 4 of them had pistols on their hips. They stopped their horses in front of the farmhouse, dust swirling around them. "Cole," Jake said, tipping his hat back. "We need to talk." "Then talk." Jake leaned forward in his saddle, his eyes scanning the property. "Word around town is you've been harboring outsiders. Strangers nobody knows. People are worried, Cole. These are uncertain times. We don't need unknown folks wandering around causing trouble." Ethan crossed his arms. "I haven't seen any trouble, have you?" "That's not the point. The point is, this is my land, my property. What happens here is my business." Jake's face darkened. "Now listen here, Cole. We're just trying to protect this community. If there are strangers in the area, We have a right to know. We have a right to make sure they're not planning anything. Planning anything? Ethan almost laughed. They were two women caught in a storm. They sheltered in my barn for one night and left at dawn. That's it. That's the whole story.
Women? Tom spoke up, his eyes narrowing. What kind of women?
Before Ethan could answer, movement caught his eye.
Two figures on horseback, emerging from the tree line to the east. Ayana and Naya. Everything happened very quickly after that.
Jake spotted the women first. His hand moved toward his pistol, not drawing it, but resting on the handle. The other men followed his lead.
Well, well, Jake said, a cold smile spreading across his face. Looks like your strangers came back, Cole. Now we can ask them some questions ourselves.
The women rode closer, slowing as they saw the standoff. Ayana's eyes moved from the armed men to Ethan, calculating, assessing. Naya's arm was wrapped in a proper splint now. Someone had taken care of her. We came for our horse, Ayana said, her voice steady despite the tension. She is healing in your barn. We will take her and leave.
Now hold on just a minute, Jake said, urging his horse forward. Nobody's going anywhere until we get some answers. Who are you people? Where do you come from? What are you doing in this area?
Ethan stepped forward, placing himself directly between Jake and the women. That's enough. Jake's eyes widened. Cole, get out of the way. No! The word hung in the air like thunder. These women are my guests, Ethan continued, his voice low and hard. They came here in peace. They've done nothing wrong, and you have no right at all, to come onto my property and threaten people. We're not threatening anyone. We're just asking questions. With your hands on your weapons? Ethan shook his head. That's not asking. That's intimidating. And I won't stand for it. Not on my land. The two men behind Jake exchanged nervous glances. This wasn't going the way they had expected. Ethan Cole had always been the quiet type, the loner who kept to himself. They hadn't expected him to stand up like this. Jake's jaw tightened. For a long moment, nobody moved. The only sound was the wind rustling through the grass and the soft snorting of the horses. Then Jake pulled his hand away from his pistol. Fine, he said, his voice bitter. Have it your way, Cole. But mark my words, this isn't over. People in town are watching. And if anything happens, anything at all, they're going to remember whose side you chose. He jerked his horse around and rode off, the other men following close behind. Ethan watched them go until they disappeared over the hill. When he turned around, Ayana was looking at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. You did not have to do that, she said quietly. Yes, I did. They will make trouble for you now. Your own people will see you as an enemy. Ethan shrugged. They weren't much of friends to begin with. Naya laughed. A bright, unexpected sound that broke the tension. Ayana shot her sister a look, but the corner of her own mouth twitched upward. You are a strange man, Ethan Cole. I've been called worse.
Ayana studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly, as if she had made a decision.
Our father will want to meet you.
1 week later, they came.
Ethan was fixing the gate to his corral when he heard the horses approaching. Not the thundering gallop of angry men this time, but something slower, more deliberate, more dignified. He straightened up and wiped the sweat from his brow. 3 riders emerged from the tree line. 2 young men rode on either side, their backs straight, their faces serious. Warriors, clearly, strong and alert, their eyes scanning the property for any sign of danger. But it was the man in the center who commanded attention. He was older, perhaps 60 years, with long silver hair that fell past his shoulders. His face was weathered by time and sun, carved with deep lines that spoke of wisdom earned through hardship. He wore traditional clothing decorated with intricate beadwork, and around his neck hung a medallion of turquoise and silver. Even without being told, Ethan knew exactly who this was. The chief, the father, Red Eagle. Ethan walked forward slowly, stopping a respectful distance from the riders. He didn't reach for any weapon. He didn't call out an alarm. He simply stood there, waiting. Red Eagle studied him with eyes that seemed to see everything. Every secret, every fear, every hidden corner of a man's soul. It was not a hostile look, but it was not warm either. It was the look of a man who had learned to judge others carefully, because the safety of his people depended on it. Finally, the chief spoke. "You are Ethan Cole." It was not a question. I am Red Eagle, father of Ayana and Naya.
Ethan nodded. I figured as much.
The ghost of a smile crossed the old man's face. My daughters told me what you did, how you gave them shelter in the storm, how you cared for Naya's injury, how you stood against your own people to protect them. I didn't do anything special. Anyone would have done the same. No. Red Eagle shook his head slowly. Not anyone. That is what makes you different, Ethan Cole. That is what makes you rare. He dismounted from his horse in one fluid motion, graceful despite his age, and walked toward Ethan. The two warriors remained mounted, watching silently. I have lived many years, Red Eagle continued. I have seen much. I have learned that a man's true character is not revealed in times of ease, but in times of difficulty. When the storm raged, you could have turned my daughters away. It would have been the safe choice, the easy choice. It wouldn't have been the right choice. Exactly. Red Eagle stopped directly in front of Ethan, close enough that Ethan could see the ancient wisdom swimming in those dark eyes. And when your own people came with anger in their hearts, you stood between them and my daughters. You risked your own standing, your own safety, for strangers.
They weren't strangers anymore.
Red Eagle was silent for a long moment. Then he reached out and placed a weathered hand on Ethan's shoulder. I came here to give you something, Ethan Cole. A gift. A thank you from my family and my people. He turned and gestured to one of the warriors, who whistled sharply. From behind the tree line, another figure emerged. Ayana, leading a horse by a rope. But not just any horse. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. The mare was pure white, not gray, not cream, but white like fresh snow, like clouds against the summer sky. She moved with an elegance that seemed almost supernatural, her muscles rippling beneath her coat, her mane flowing like silk in the breeze. She was, without question, the most beautiful horse Ethan had ever seen. This is Spirit Wind, Red Eagle said, his voice filled with reverence. She has been in my family for 4 generations. Only chiefs have ever ridden her. She is sacred to my people, more valuable than gold, more precious than land. Ethan stared at the magnificent creature, then back at Red Eagle. I can't accept this. You must. No, you don't understand. This is too much. I didn't help your daughters for a reward. I helped them because it was the right thing to do. I don't deserve something this valuable. Red Eagle smiled. A real smile this time. Warm and genuine. And that, Ethan Cole, is exactly why you deserve her. Ayana led Spirit Wind closer. The mare stopped in front of Ethan and lowered her head, as if in greeting. Almost without thinking, he reached out and stroked her velvet nose. Something passed between them in that moment. A connection. An understanding. She has chosen you, Ayana said softly. She does not do that with many people. Ethan looked at the bracelet on his wrist, the one he had been wearing every day since he found it. Then he looked at Spirit Wind. Then at Ayana, whose dark eyes held something he couldn't quite name. I don't know what to say. Say nothing, Red Eagle replied. Simply accept, and know that from this day forward, you are a friend of our people. Our door is always open to you. Our fire will always have a place for you.
Ethan stood in silence, his hand still resting on Spirit Wind's soft muzzle.
The weight of the moment pressed down on him. This was more than a gift, more than a thank you. This was an invitation into a world he had never known, a world of tradition, honor, and connection that he had spent his whole life searching for without even realizing it. Red Eagle watched him with patient eyes. The old chief understood what was happening inside Ethan's heart. He had seen it before, in others who had been wandering alone for too long. You carry a heavy burden, Red Eagle said quietly. I see it in your eyes. The loneliness, the isolation. You have built walls around yourself, Ethan Cole. Strong walls. But walls that keep others out, also keep you trapped inside. Ethan said nothing. What could he say? The old man was right. A man is not meant to walk alone, Red Eagle continued. We are all connected. To the land, to the sky, to each other. When you helped my daughters, you reached across a divide that many believe cannot be crossed. You proved that kindness has no boundaries. He gestured towards Spirit Wind. This horse represents that truth. She is a bridge between our worlds. When you ride her, you carry the spirit of my people with you. And when others see her, they will know that you are a man of honor. Ethan swallowed hard. His throat felt tight. I've never been part of anything, he said finally. No family, no community, just me and this empty land. That changes today. Ayana stepped forward, her dark eyes shining. My father speaks the truth, she said. What you did for us, it was not small. In our culture, such acts of courage and kindness are remembered for generations. Songs will be sung about the cowboy who stood alone against his own people to protect two Apache women. I don't need songs. Perhaps not, but you need something. She tilted her head, studying him. Everyone does. Naya appeared beside her sister, her arm still in its splint, but her smile bright and warm. You need friends, Ethan Cole, and whether you like it or not, you have them now. We do not forget those who help us. Ever. For the first time in longer than he could remember, Ethan felt something crack open inside his chest. Not pain. Something else. Something that felt strangely like hope. I don't know how to thank you, he said, his voice rough. Red Eagle shook his head. You already have. By being who you are. By refusing to let fear and suspicion poison your heart. That is the greatest gift anyone can give. He turned and walked back to his horse, mounting with the same fluid grace he had shown before. There is one more thing, the chief said, looking down at Ethan. Our camp is 3 hours' ride to the east, in the valley beyond the Red Rocks. You are welcome there any time. Come and share our fire. Learn our ways. Let us learn yours. You would trust me in your home. Trust is earned through actions, not words. You have already earned ours. The two warriors nodded in agreement, their stern faces softening just slightly. Ayana mounted her own horse, but she lingered for a moment, her eyes meeting Ethan's. Will you come? It was a simple question, but Ethan understood that his answer would determine the direction of his entire future. He could refuse. He could retreat back into his lonely farmhouse, back into the safe walls he had built around himself. He could live out the rest of his days in quiet isolation. Or he could step forward into something new, something terrifying, something wonderful. Yes, he said. I'll come. Ayana smiled, a real smile, one that transformed her entire face and made Ethan's heart skip in a way he hadn't felt in years. Then we will see you soon, Ethan Cole.
He watched them ride away until they disappeared over the horizon.
Then he turned to Spirit Wind, who stood patiently beside him, her white coat glowing in the afternoon sun. Well, he said softly, running his hand along her neck. Looks like it's you and me now.
The man nickered gently, as if in response.
Ethan looked out at the vast landscape stretching before him, the same land he had stared at 1,000 times before. But somehow, it looked different now, fuller, more alive. He thought about the town behind him. Jake and his suspicions, the whispers and stares. Let them talk. Let them judge. He had spent his whole life trying to fit in, trying to be what others expected him to be. No more. He had found something better, something real.
He swung himself onto Spirit Wind's back. She moved beneath him like water, smooth and powerful. Together, they walked toward the setting sun.
Behind him was his old life, lonely, safe, and empty. Ahead of him was the unknown, dangerous, uncertain, and full of possibility. Ethan Cole smiled. For the first time in years, he was not afraid.